welcome to the Torchcast. This is your host, Kit Biby. That was The Doors' Light My Fire, which is a request by today's very special guest, my father, Bruce Biby. Hey.
Hi, Kit. How are you?
I'm good. Where are you? What time is it where you are? Because it seems like it's your bedtime about.
It's very close to bedtime. It's 9:37.
Okay. So you're in my time zone. You're in one of the Carolinas, right?
Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in the hills, actually, at a secluded getaway for some of our teammates.
Oh, yeah. So it's a work thing.
It is a work thing.
Well, good times. So the reason I wanted to have you on is because many of us, myself included, are graduating here, and so you've had a successful and storied business career, and I thought it'd be nice to get some sage advice. You up for it?
Sure. Yeah, I'm surprised you called me, but okay, that'll be fine.
Okay, well, let's start with your freshman year at Michigan State. It's 1983, and you show up with a suitcase. And what was your mentality going into school, and what would you have changed if you could go back now and start over?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say it was not a suitcase. It was more like a laundry basket. Most of the clothes were clean. I do recall being kicked out of the back seat of the 83 Delta 88 that my dad had just purchased. And then far-flung out the back door, and that was my entrance to Michigan State. Yeah.
And were you nervous? I'm doing this as like advice for freshmen.
Yeah, I was not nervous, I guess. I was probably more excited to be out of the house and on my own.
Yeah. So now take me back to 1983. You get through college. What would you have done differently if you could go back and you're walking into your dorm for the first time? What would you change about your college experience?
I actually would change very little. I would. My advice to anybody going to college is to get as much experience and to see as many people, experience as many things as possible. Most of which, if you could get outside of your own comfort zone, the better.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Okay. And then now it's 4 years later. It's 1987, and you're take me to right now, April 18th, 1987. You're going to graduate in 2 or 3 weeks. Where are you at in your life then? Where I'm at right now?
I would say I was pretty much a mess. I had no job prospects. Was 2 weeks away from being booted out of the rental house, and really was looking for direction at that point.
Yeah, and then so you graduate, and what do you do right out of school?
I immediately became homeless. And then, unfortunately, not shortly thereafter, I was able to find a job, so it worked out in the end.
What were you doing?
I was working as a janitor post-grad, which was good in a couple of ways because it was a skill that I had acquired over a couple of months. And then I was able to use some of the tools, so like the carpet shampooer, to make sure that we didn't have a deposit issue on the rental house.
Yeah. So you got really good at shampooing carpets and mopping up kitchens. That was able to save you $83 over your lifetime.
I think it was, yeah, that's exactly right, actually.
Good. Well, fun. I always love that. I of course, know the answers to these questions, but I always love the janitor story because it makes me feel better about graduating and having limited prospects, I guess you could say. But
yeah,
you got...
the way I look at it is anything is a great experience, right? And if you can learn from it and not get hung up on it in the moment, it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah. So, last question. You have had like I said at the beginning, a storied business career, and it ended up being a good career. What would your career advice be to somebody in my position or any of my graduating classmates in terms of how do you launch your career into the stratosphere?
I would say the single piece of advice I would offer to anybody is take whatever role that you're in very, very seriously. So if you're, in my case, I was a janitor, be the best janitor that you can be. If you're working at Arby's, be the best Arby's employee that you can be. Be the best at what you are doing, and all good things will come from that.
Awesome. So, am I being the best? I don't know how often you listen. I just don't ask because I don't really know if I want to know the answer. But am I the best podcaster I can be?
Yes.
What was your favorite episode, Pop? I'm just, yeah, this one is your favorite. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
It's been my pleasure, Kip, and enjoy the last couple of weeks of your semester.
Yeah.
And
then you'll be here with the U-Haul in a couple weeks.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
All right. I was going to ask you for gas money, but I'll do that off the air.
Okay, that'll be fine. The answer's still the same. Hell no.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thanks for coming on. I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
All right. That was Papa Biby calling in from North Carolina Hills. Sorry about the audio. It got a little bit wonky in there, but we'll move on to news in just a second.
Take me out tonight, where there's music and there's people and the young and the light. Driving in your car, I never want to.
Hey now. Welcome back to the Torchcast. Special thanks to my father for coming on this week. What I know about my dad is that he's not really a showman kind of guy. He doesn't. He wouldn't start a podcast on his own. So I was worried a little bit that he wouldn't. Maybe he'd be uncomfortable with being on air, but he seemed very comfortable and he gave great advice. So I think everyone should listen. It's done me really well. To listen to my father. And sometimes when I don't listen to him, I find that there are consequences. So everyone, give what he said some thought. And this week I don't have a guest for news, so I'm going to go through the news on my own. I didn't know if anyone could follow my dad. Who would want to follow that? So I just figured I'd do it on my own. It should be a pretty short podcast this week. But I will go through the news now. Let's see. We got The Scientific Resistance, an article by Harley Harrison. This article is about the March for Science that's happening all around the country. There's a main march, and that march is in Washington, D.C., but there are many, many satellite marches around the country. One of the satellite marches is in Big Rapids, and I'll get into that in a second. But there's satellite marches. There's 14 of them in Michigan, so that should tell you something about how many there are in the country. This year, the March for Science is a little bit more political than it's been in the past. So this year, it'll focus mainly on global warming and Trump's kind of perceived dismissal of global warming. One of the things cited in the article was a tweet by Donald Trump saying that it was really cold out or something, so he said, "Bring on the global warming," or something like that. He tweeted that in 2015. I doubt he would say anything like that now, despite if he feels that way now or not. But so there are there's 4 events going on this week. It's by the time you're listening to this, it might be too late to enjoy the events. But this week at Ferris, April 17th through 21st, there's a Bulldog Sustainability Alliance. They're going to be selling honey buns to raise money for honeybees. I don't know if you just heard that. It was actually the cat scratching at my door. I think she wants in. But anyway, I digress. They're selling honey buns to raise money for honeybees. I don't know exactly what a honeybee does with money. I imagine they're giving it to somebody or some organization that handles honeybees. But honeybees are really important for our ecosystem, so it seems worthy. Let's see. The Outdoor Club will be selling flower pots from April 18th through the 20th. They're selling pots on 4/20. I don't know if that was planned, but it is serendipitous. I don't know. Is that the word, serendipitous? There's no one here to answer my questions. Being alone right now it's pretty lonely. But all right, let's see. There's also a keynote event, which is Chris Mensing He's going to be speaking. He's a fish and wildlife biologist, so I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say. And the event finishes off with the Ferris State March for Science, which is April 22nd at 3:30 p.m. at Top Taggart Field. Let's see. Next thing we got on news: human trafficking in Michigan. Harley Harrison and Marley Tucker wrote this article. So there was a 2-day event last week to promote human trafficking awareness. It was put on by the Ferris State University Coalition Against Slavery and the Professional Convention Management Association. So I'm sure most of you walked in the UC and saw everything going on for those couple of days. It was a pretty big event. There are thousands of cases of human trafficking in this country every year, and they're trying to educate people on not just the statistics, but actually the warning signs of human trafficking, ranging from sex trafficking to labor trafficking. I mean, it takes all forms. So a worthy cause, if you ask me. Another piece of news is MIPs, minor in possession of alcohol, is now a civil infraction as opposed to a misdemeanor as it was before. The bill was signed by Governor Snyder in December of last year. So now an MIP is like a speeding ticket. Excuse me, it's the first offense of an MIP is like a speeding ticket as opposed to a misdemeanor crime. And it's interesting. I worked in the probation department in Mecosta County this past summer for an internship, and I saw many people go through the process after getting an MIP. And at that time, it was a misdemeanor. And most of the time, I think probably nearly 100%, at least for first offenses, the people that were charged were able to get it reduced or actually expunged from their record as long as they were able to adhere to the probationary terms set by the judge. So I talked to Director of Public Safety Bruce Borkovich about it, and I asked his opinion. And he felt that the old misdemeanor charge was good for deterring people from underage drinking. And the civil infraction he didn't think it was necessary because it lacked the deterrence factor, and even with the misdemeanor, you're able to get it off your record. It wouldn't affect your life as long as you were able to get your act together for, normally it's 6 months, the probationary period. So I guess my opinion is that I'm okay with it being a civil infraction. I was okay with it being a misdemeanor as long as people aren't getting their life, ruined. I guess ruined isn't the right word, but life really affected by a MIP charge. Because it's really not a huge deal. It's a mistake somebody makes, and as long as it's not on their record, I'm okay with it. So if that means a misdemeanor that gets reduced or expunged, or a civil infraction, I'm okay with either. So that's my opinion. If you wanted it, you got it anyway. All right, next piece of news. So college degrees that pay the best. Now, this was a really interesting article, not super surprising. I'll go through the list of the top 10. So chemical engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, software design, mechanical engineering, computer engineering, civil engineering, management information systems, and construction. I think I just read 2 computer engineerings. So I don't know if computer engineering is just so valuable that it gets a spot twice on the list, or that, you want a round number, so you want 10, so you just throw another computer engineering in there. I don't know why they slipped that in there, but they did. And also I noticed that psychology, which is my major, is not on here, which is an abomination. I think probably out of school, to be fair, I think I should earn probably $300,000 or $400,000 with my bachelor's in psychology, but that's just me. Let's see. Patrick Maloney is the new student government president. After a fierce competition. I'm just kidding. He actually ran unopposed. He's now been elected president. The article talked about the low voter turnout for the student government president, and it's been this way in the past that there's low turnout, but this year especially, there was very few people that voted. And one of the reasons cited was that, he ran unopposed, so there's not a ton of incentive to vote. And one thing student government said is that I think it was Josh, the current president, Josh Olszewski, said is that they did their best to just simply provide Patrick's platform, as opposed to saying he's the person to vote for. They're trying to be impartial in that they're just providing what he wants to bring to the table, and they're encouraging people to vote, whether that's writing someone in or voting for Patrick. So that's interesting. We'll see how it comes together. I think Patrick's a good guy. I don't really know him, but I think he'll do a good job. And hopefully in the future there's more participation in terms of running for student government president. It's a good gig. I think it'd be great on a resume. So hopefully people take advantage of that in the future. And then I just have one opinion here I wanted to touch on. It's adopt instead of buy when getting a dog. I guess I don't have a huge opinion on this. There's a lot of people that are really passionate about adopting a dog instead of buying a dog. My opinion is that you shouldn't do either, at least not when you're in college. I've written about this in the past, and I've talked about it on the Torchcast in the past, so I won't go super into it. But buying a dog in college, in my view, is pretty irresponsible and unnecessary. You're surrounded by so many friends. Why would you need another thing, another dog? And I guess I don't really have room to talk because there's a cat sitting 6 feet from me right now. But cats are pretty low maintenance. It's not like a dog where you have to take it out all the time. It's not nearly as expensive as a dog. A cat's pretty autonomous. So I think it's a decent college. I really don't think anyone should have a pet in college, but I guess having a cat kind of makes me a hypocrite. But anyway, it's Penny Lane. Penny Lane's the cat. She's pretty cute. I couldn't get rid of her. I shouldn't take credit for getting her. My roommate Jake actually found her in the woods. Took her to the vet, cleaned her up, and now she's his. But I take care of it just as much as Jake, so I take a little bit of credit for the cat. But anyway, adopting instead of buying, I guess it's good because you want to save a dog from being put down. But at the same time, I understand buying a dog because you want a kind of a clean slate. I mean, you can find a dog, you can adopt a dog that's been abused, and I understand the romance of taking it home and giving it a better life. But it's sometimes when a dog has been conditioned to attack or be defensive or standoffish, it might not be super fun for you and your family and friends. But all right, that's all we got from the paper this week. I know it's a short episode, but listen next week for my last Torchcast. I'm graduating, moving on, and I'm sure somebody will take over the spot next semester. But yeah, next week's my last one. I'm having Jake Law as a guest. He was a fan favorite over the last year, so I'm having him back on. We'll wrap up the school year then. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. Have a good week.